Hello and welcome to the 2002 Saab 9.5 Aero. This is a wagon with a manual transmission, which makes it extremely rare. But more importantly, this is my 2002 Saab 9.5 Aero. I'm going to be selling it soon, so we're going to do a video on it. We're going to talk about kind of the neat features that are on the car, how it drives, all the little quirks and stuff like that. And if at the end of the video, the car interests you, you can actually bid for it on carsandbids.com. If it's past that time, then enjoy this video on, well, a car from a company that doesn't exist anymore. Now, what is the Saab 9.5? Well, the Saab 9.5 was the flagship model for Saab, so to speak. It kind of competed with things like the BMW 5 Series and the Mercedes E-Class at the time. And although those cars were rear-wheel drive, the Saab was actually front-wheel drive, which kind of gave it more of a niche appeal. It's one of those things where if you know, but it didn't have a broad appeal. Starting with the outside though, the design I think is quite clean. It's something that's aged really well. Again, this is a 02 model, and so they actually built this body style from 99 to 09, if I remember correctly, and they had 2 facelifts in the process. But the styling of it I think is quite neat because it's something that is a little bit more conservative, something that kind of aged really well after 20 years, and that's not something that can be said about cars today. This is the Aero, so it's the top of the trim version. It actually is a fully equipped Aero, so it has things like the HID headlights, which are also auto leveling, so if you have more things in the trunk and it's a little bit heavier and the car's kind of aimed up, the headlights will actually auto adjust so that you're not blinding oncoming traffic, which is kind of cool. It's got fog lights. I really like the headlight washers, which is kind of neat. It comes on when you wash the windshield, when you turn on the windshield washer. A couple of faded parts of the car in the front here. The bumper is very well scratched in love, and same thing with the splitter down here. And yes, it does have a splitter because it is the Aero model. That's kind of something that you can differentiate between the non-Aero models, is this kind of front lip right here. Very worn on this one. This car is well used. It's not a garage queen. It's not a show car per se. This is something that you can actually drive and use without hurting over every single scratch. The front chin spoiler here has also been repaired a little bit too, which is kind of funny. Lots of a clear coat fading kind of going on the hood there in little patches, little circles. I really like, in terms of features, it has 3 washer nozzles for the windshield, which is kind of cool, gives you great coverage. All OEM glass on the car, which is really neat. It has the original Aero wheels as well, which I think are quite handsome, wrapped in, we got Michelin Pilot Sport All Season 4s on the car, and they're relatively new. The previous owner actually upgraded the struts. If you peek through, they're actually yellow because they're Bilstein struts, which is really hilarious. Going down the side of the car, on the later models, I think in the 06 facelift, they actually painted the door handles. So even though this is a higher trim 9.5, it actually has unpainted door handles, which I kind of like. It kind of offers a little bit of contrast. That with the side molding here, which is kind of neat. We got the nice side skirts down there as well. In terms of actual design, it's just such a clean, classic car, and you know, they don't style cars like this anymore. Everyone's trying to have some type of gimmick nowadays. You know, you got to have extra angles and big grills and stuff, but I just think this type of really conservative, possibly boring design just ages really well, you know, over time, which is cool. Going to the back, one of the things I really enjoy is that this car actually has parking sensors. Yes, it's a 20-year-old car that, although it doesn't have a backup camera, it has parking sensors that are fairly accurate. They beep, you know, accordingly, and so I don't have any type of problem backing this car up, even though, you know, it's kind of difficult to see out the back being a wagon. Taking a look at the inside, Couple things to note. I drove all the way to Spokane here from Seattle to get this car filmed. And one thing that I noted on that trip, even though it was a 4-hour trip, extremely comfortable seats. The seats are fully power operated except for the lumbar. That part is manually adjustable, but 3-position for the memory, which is kind of neat. Door cord is extremely simple. There's not even the door lock controls or the window switches on it. That's actually all in the center console. The cabin just has like a sense of simplicity about it that I really enjoy. A little bit different from the Germans and quite different from the Japanese. It really has its own unique flavor in terms of interior design, which is really neat. I love up here, there's the fasten seatbelt sign, which kind of looks like it's the fasten seatbelt sign on an airplane, which is really fun. And there's even a little light here that you can adjust just like you are in an airplane, which is really cool. Again, the cabin is just so simple. There's no digital gauge cluster or anything like that. You know, you got the funky key in the center console here, as most Saabs did from this era, which was not done just to be weird. It was actually done for safety purposes so that the key wouldn't hit your knee right here during an accident, which is really cool. The windshield, you'll notice, is quite curved, and that's actually a design trait from the original 900. And they did that because it would actually give you more room for your head to be thrown forward, basically, in an accident. Swedish manufacturers in general, Volvo, of course, are known for safety because, you know, the Swedish roads are very dangerous. They're very icy most of the year. It's very dark where they drive. It's wet, lots of hills, elk running. I believe Saab actually had a famous test where they rammed the car into an elk to see how safe it is. On the subject of safety, you know, the car actually has side airbags right here, but it's not a curtain airbag, so there's no curtain airbags on this car. The airbag right here, if I saw in the video correctly, it actually kind of comes up right here and protects your side. And the reason why it doesn't have curtain airbags is because Saab had this really unique structural design, which was designed so that during a side impact, it has to do with the beams in the door and just the general structure of the car. It would actually just shoot the energy from the impact down into the baseboard of the car and protect you. And this is actually something that was approved by the Insurance Institute Highway Safety Organization, whatever it's called, IIHS, that we have in the US, as an alternative to a traditional side curtain airbag. So that's really cool. Saab was absolutely huge on safety. The way that they designed the frame of the car was heavily influenced by their aeronautical engineers, which I think is really interesting. If you take a look at the dashboard here, you can really see Saab's motto of "Born from Jets." It wasn't completely a marketing term. There was a lot of jet influence in here. If you look at the dashboard right here in general, it's very clearly oriented towards you. The gauge cluster is extremely easy to read. It's a green color, which some people think is a little bit old-fashioned. I kind of like it. I had that in my 99 Subaru. It feels like an old-fashioned color, but it's a very dark and rich green at night. It's really nice. Speaking of driving at night, you have the classic Saab night panel button that basically blanks out almost all the dials on the gauge cluster here. It will blank out the tachometer, the fuel, the coolant temp, and even the turbo gauge. And it not only turns off the light there, but actually, you know, turns off the needles, so the needles all fall to zero. And for the speedometer, it only illuminates 3/4 of it. So it'll only illuminate up to 90 miles an hour, unless you get up to about 85, at which point it will actually illuminate the rest of the speedometer there, which I think is quite an interesting touch. I like the little air vents where it has the air vent guides on the inside, the little vanes. They're not external, so it's actually a flush design out here, but then you adjust it inside. It's a neat interior. It's something that kind of grows on you. There might be some areas where you might think, oh, that looks cheap, but you have to remember, just before the 06 facelift, now this is an 02, so this is the first time they facelifted this model. This was still majority Saab parts in here. You know, that's kind of the tragedy with Saab, is the cars were so incredibly well built. A lot of people say, well, they were just GM products. GM wishes they were just GM products. For a while, they were telling Saab to take their whatever GM platform they wanted them to build off of, and Saab would be like, well, that's not good enough. And then you kept changing and kept changing. And I believe some of their models were actually 70% different from the GM car that they were supposed to be based off of, which is costing GM a lot of money, which is ultimately what was their demise. In this era of 9.5, this 02 right here is a really good blend of subtle updates while still maintaining some of that Saab quality, because when you get to the 06, which is the final facelift before they killed off this generation in 09, they started cheapening out on the materials towards the later years, and they started having like the GM head unit in here, and then the GM gauge cluster, and just the overall Saab quality that people really appreciate. They like it a little bit more on these older 9.5, so this is a good year to have. Taking a look at the glove box in here, first of all, it's massive, but I like that there's a little vent in there that you can open and close, and basically that allows air from the air vents from the air conditioning, if it's running, to cool your glove box. I don't know what you cool in there, maybe some chocolates or something, I don't know, but it's an option. You can keep your glove box cool, so that's a nice feature as well. Back seats, let's take a look. First of all, Lots of space back here. A lot of cars don't fit me in the back because I have to lean the front seat quite a bit because I sit in a really crazy position. So the back seats here are good. I wish they would recline. With that said though, they are very comfortable in terms of the support and the cushioning and things like that. It's very similar to the seats up front. Again, I can't stress enough how comfortable the seats are. You're gonna absolutely love it if you ever set foot in one of these. Love the little pockets and the B pillars right here for putting stuff. I put a little can of Kleenex and also an air freshener in here. We talked about lots of clever features on the car. Again, for a 20-year-old car, this thing has heated rear seats. How fantastic is that? Got an armrest here with the cup holders that pop out right there. One thing I will note that's interesting about the back seats that's not available on this specific car is that back in the day, Saab actually had an option for a booster seat. And how that worked was this panel right here on the back seat, it would actually fold down and basically elevate the seat cushion, and it turned this seat into a built-in booster seat. So that was a really cool feature as well. On the topic of safety and child seats, all the rear seat belts on the Saab actually have a little lock on here, so it kind of locks that buckle in place so it doesn't slide about while you're trying to get that car seat in. So just lots of clever touches, which is actually something a little bit different than the Polestar that we reviewed last time around. That was a car that had lots of quirks that didn't benefit the functionality of the car, whereas in here, every single thing that's different about it actually has functionality, actually makes a difference, makes the experience of the car better or even safer. So that's neat. That's the true Swedish design that I was looking for in that car. All right, let's take a look at the trunk, which is obviously its star feature here. Absolutely massive. I love the cargo cover area right here because it's not some type of flimsy cloth or cover or whatever. It's like you can actually put some stuff on here, which is kind of neat, and it folds up kind of like that to reveal the area. One feature that I wish the Saab had though was the rolling floor, I think it was called. And what the rolling floor was, it replaces this panel right here. And the neat feature is that it actually rolls and slides out, kind of like that. And so it does two things. One, you can kind of sit on it, kind of like it's a Range Rover, because it kind of extends out. People use it as like a picnic bench type of function. But the better functionality is actually for if someone has like a bad back, if you just don't have that mobility, instead of picking up something heavy and kind of leaning over and dropping in, you can actually pick it up and simply set it down on this little surface, and then you can roll the whole thing in, and it just makes getting heavy things in and out a lot easier. A couple things to showcase in here. We got the Harman Kardon subwoofer back here because this has the top of the line sound system. If you take a look right in here, we have OEM Saab first aid kit. Looks like it expires in 2025, so we still got some life left on that, which is really cool. Taking a look here, there's some storage down in here, and would be storage if you rip out this little antenna right here. This is the OnStar antenna. Most people probably don't use that anymore. It does still kind of work. I did press it the other day, and then it got me connected to an operator, which was kind of funny. Love the extra space that's down here. You can kind of store some things if you want to keep it safe. If you want to access your spare tire, you can actually use this hook, kind of hook it like that. Then you can access all your stuff. Has the full toolkit and everything, so that's nice. But yeah, this hook is quite clever. I would have put hydraulics in this little board, but it is what it is. I like that in the back here, you have air vents that actually help defrost the side windows, even though the side windows actually have their own defrosters, which is kind of funny. But man, massive trunk space, absolutely massive. It's awesome. One other interesting thing about the trunk is that if you notice, it doesn't have external struts. The gas struts are actually built inside here, which, okay, if they wear out, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to replace, but kind of creates a much more cleaner aesthetic, so you just have a regular old hinge out here. All right, something to note about the taillights. How European is this? This actually has rear fog lights. Now, everyone has front fog lights. That's nothing interesting. But here in America, a little bit more difficult to find rear fog lights. And it's not a light that's kind of in the center bumper or anything like that. It literally is just this rear tail light stays on that, higher brightness all the time. That's it. That's the rear fog light. So how does the Saab 9.5 drive? Well, it's not sharp or anything like that. This is definitely more of a cruiser type of vehicle. And like I said, I drove about 4 hours to get to Spokane here, and it was comfortable, and that's what this car is designed to do. It's not a canyon carver, it's more of a highway missile is how I like to describe it. Incredibly quick. You know, Jeremy Clarkson was famous on Top Gear for saying that this would do 40 to 70 miles an hour faster than the 996 generation 911 Turbo back in the day, which is insane. It's kind of interesting how the power band is set up on this car. It's not the quickest 0 to 60 car out there, but it's designed to have really good passing power, which is that mid-range torque in the middle of the power band, which is really neat. So overall, just a very comfortable place to be. You know, that's not to say that it's sloppy in corners. It can definitely do corners, but don't expect any type of information coming from the steering wheel or anything like that. You're not gonna feel when the tires are losing grip from the steering wheel, nothing of that sorts, but it's a very competent car. It can handle corners well, but it's not the sharpest thing in the world. In day-to-day driving, it's really great in the rain. I assume it's great in the snow. I know a lot of people use these vehicles in the snow, even though it doesn't have all-wheel drive, at least not this generation. It's a really great thing to be in while you're on a long road trip. You know, it's very quiet. Road noise is very well isolated. Wind noise is very well isolated. Let's get some speed up into the car. I'll have Andrew flip off the noise isolation in post, and maybe you can hear the actual ambient. I'll let you take a listen. So that 45 miles an hour. I remember last night when I was driving, you know, a little bit faster than that on the freeway, even then, it just didn't feel like I was being bombarded with noises coming from the outside. Minimal squeaking on this car as well, which is crazy for a 20-year-old car. But yeah, overall, it's just a really enjoyable place to be, as long as you don't expect it to be super sporty. And I guess that's the reason why people purchase this over the German alternative, is that it's a little bit softer, it's a little bit easier on you as a person as you're driving long distances. Just really good for that type of driving, really enjoy it. Something that also helps when you're driving at night is the night panel button that we talked about earlier. I remember driving last night and it was awesome having all the gauges turn off except for the speedometer. Really nice taking away that eye fatigue from inside the cabin, being able to kind of focus on outside, because on some of these roads here, there wasn't a lot of street lighting or anything like that. So to be able to have your inside light off and be able to focus on the details outside and be able to catch any type of debris or any type of weird things going on outside, that was a really nice benefit. I really enjoyed the night panel feature. It's not gimmicky. It's not something that they put in just to brag that, hey, we're inspired by jets or anything like that. So just like how the steering is quite soft, the rest of the controls here are kind of the same way. The gear shifter is quite long. It's not a short throw shifter. It's not super sharp or notchy or anything like that. It's a very effortless shifter. Clutch is also pretty soft, but has a really good engagement point. It's quite easy to use. I really enjoy that. Brakes also have a softness to them as well, even though this is the Aero model, which has the better suspension and the bigger brakes and stuff. Don't be fooled. This is not a sports wagon or anything like that. It is sporty-ish. I wouldn't say it's sloppy like a Lexus. I wouldn't say it's soft in that sense. You know, it's still a European car, so there is still type of firmness to some of it. But overall, though, it has like this kind of cushiony feel to it, and you're kind of feeling like you're being gently carried along on the road, which is really neat. It's a nice feature. Again, with the space of this car, with the comfort of it all, it's just fantastic on road trips. Highly recommend it for that purpose. So overall, I've really enjoyed owning this car. For me, it just doesn't quite fit the bill of the daily driver. I wanted something that was able to be a little bit more practical than my BRZ, you know, something that's going to have back seats, a little bit bigger trunk in case I needed to carry things, but something also really fuel efficient. And unfortunately, I average about 23 miles per gallon in this car, which is pretty good for the performance that you get with this car. It's a 2.3 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine. It's got about almost 260 pound-feet of torque, 250 horsepower. It's got some good power numbers. So 23 miles per gallon, not bad, but just not quite what I'm looking for a daily driver. But someone out there, if you're looking at this and you like this car and you've been looking for a Saab like this, like I said, in this configuration, it's one of 28. So it's a pretty hard car to find, especially as these cars get older and whatnot. It's going to be even more difficult to find, especially one that's not rusted out and is not crashed or anything like that. So yeah, if you're interested in this vehicle, you know, if you're lucky and if you see this video in time, again, it's going to be available for auction on carsandbids.com. You should be able to see that in the description below.